I was born in a Catholic family and I was very Catholic. I was baptized and confirmed when I was 8 years old. I grew up in the countryside in the farmlands just like Elisha. An accident happened in the month of April, while we were planting some wheat and it was raining. I tried to escape the drizzle and I was injured badly. My father tried to take out the scythe that penetrated my leg. He tied a rope very tightly around my leg to see if it would stop the blood, but I was still bleeding, and it was still early in the morning, and he carried me screaming for help but there was no help. He rode the horse and after hours of riding we met Brother Oscar that came on horseback and says God sent me. My father told him come and see what happened. He untied that rope where I was bleeding. When Brother Oscar prayed immediately God stopped the blood right away. There was no more bleeding and no pain and it remained that way. Brother Oscar told my father this boy is not going to die because this boy will be a preacher of the gospel. Later my cousin was attacked and hit by a Macumba witch, and she became depressed, obese, and then she couldn't walk anymore and tried to kill himself many times. Finally my aunt hired an evangelical girl to stay with her. When we went to church she manifested a demon that left her life for the pastor prayed and cast him out, and she got up freed and healed. I was going to work, even on the 6th of August, the night we went to church. The presbyter Pastor Natalino prayed for revelation, and then he said to the audience, God shows me that 2 people will die in this church for he will take them. The pastor told the assembly, I saw 2 angels that came down here and took 2 souls and transported them to the sky. I did not know that one of the 2 souls was my wife and the other was his only daughter. I thought she was joking. She said to me God has shown me a clock in the sky and my time is coming for this. On the 7th, we were going to work coming from São Marcos to São José dos. In fact, I left the house with my wife and sister. We passed a sister at the bus stop. I worked at the same company with my wife. I said let's give Sister Lowry a lift. She got into the car. When we arrived at the traffic lights we stopped for the red light. Suddenly came a truck loaded with sand in great speed without brakes and it crashed into my car, that went below the truck and hit a pole in the ravine. The truck loaded with sand fell on top of us and dumped the sand on top of our car. My wife and his sister were killed on the spot. Brothers, I was conscious and swallowing sand. There was no possibility of a human being to stay alive. I don't know how God left me alive. I was hospitalized and discharged the following morning. Being traumatized I feared to go home and went to the church. I stayed there for another 3 months seeking Jesus. I didn't want to blame God. I was preached and celebrated Holy Communion and finally I went home. My children were crying. I didn't want to go home for they would ask me where is Mum. It was tough, but we have to do like Paul, fight the good fight of faith. We can't lose faith, but it happened that I lost faith in Jesus. As a result the Holy Spirit left me and I was so empty. My life had no meaning anymore. When I pray I didn't feel anything from God. I would often fast, but I felt that God was not receiving it and I began to move away from the church. When a person is baptized with the Holy Spirit and has intimacy with God, and when the presence of the Holy Spirit life no longer the life has no meaning, I started staying at home, without Holy Communion. I was at home watching soap operas and watching movies to fill that void. One day when I was leaving home to go to work when God warned me not to go and not to harden my heart, but I persisted and went to work, where I had an accident. All my skull gave me head trauma, and when I fell to the ground still agonizing, I tried to reconcile with God, but I was already in coma. This reality was erased. I was already dead and I started to see a white fog. I said, my God, what is happening to me? Then I saw death coming, identical to a slug. He was the size of a truck and was flying. I screamed to death, no, I can't die now, I'm a deviant Christian, and he came and swallowed me. I left my body and I was already a spirit. I saw my body lying on the ground. I saw these workers who spoke to my unconscious body, and I began to see a pit, the mouth of this well leading to his tunnel that was getting upwards, and I was already falling and I was shouting, Father. I was shouting, my children, I am falling, someone out the drop rope for me. Finally I fell into a hole, and I said, my God, I'm going to hell while my wife is in heaven just because I strayed from the way of the Lord. Brethren, while we are alive we often defend our mistakes, we even hide things and we are in denial, but when you die our conscience become our judge. I then started to see why faults because I deviated from the gospel. I saw when I said I'm not going to church anymore, when I refused to attend the supper and fellowship with brethren and refused to preach gospel. Brethren, may your decision be to serve God and may your decision not be to leave the paths of the Lord. The saddest thing is contempt, for a person who dies without salvation feels like he is the worst rubbish, better not to have been born in the first place. In hell you screams and no one respond. How many people are there in the abyss shouting, but there's no way to help someone who's in the abyss. I fell in hell and entered a terrible darkness in a huge well. I was not alone, countless souls kept falling down in the abyss shouting. I started to hear terrifying screams that came from the depth of the abyss. Thousands of people were shouting out to me. I've already helped and took care of people in terminal cancer. Just the moaning of people you can't eat. You know what I'm saying, there's no way you can't even eat, but there in hell it's not just scream, it's terrifying scream. It's not one person screaming, it's thousands souls screaming water and help. If the people who are deviated and no longer serving God heard the screams of people who are there alive in hell, for sure all of them will reconcile with God. When I got to where they were and I started to feel a terrible heat. In life when you burn a finger you try to protect the finger, but when the whole body is drowned in the fire there is nowhere to protect yourself. When I had entered into the fire where these souls were, and I started screaming like them because of the heat, terrifying screams, and I said I'm in hell, and I will never leave again, and I screamed for water and help. I don't know how many hours I spent in hell there. People feel extreme thirsty and pain. If you take a person out of hell and calm their pain and ask him where did you live, he will tell you about whole his life on earth. People know everything for they have their conscience together. Brothers, I was there in the middle of that fire screaming, and there are moments when those demons gave terrifying screams. Brothers, hell is a cave under the ground. It's like a cylinder, a huge tunnel that descends underground where there are innumerable souls of men, women, young screaming. Demons alone give a terrifying scream. It starts like a whirlwind and the fire ignites more and those screams of fire start. A devil made a terrible scream and the wind started and then starts desperate screaming of doomed souls, because of increasing torment that no man can bear. There is no way to bear this heat and those demons were torturing people. There are things that I don't know how to tell about the pain these doomed souls were going through. My biggest fear is that I'll go back there. I spend hours on my knees praying and asking God to free me and to free my family. May God open your mind so you can understand what hell is. Hell is real. I thought I was going to hell forever. I had stopped perhaps thinking that for the smallest things you wouldn't go to the abyss. Brother, fix your life. Go back to Jesus, the sooner the better. As it says in the book of James chapter 4 and verse 13, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away, a fog that appears, and soon it disappears. Today I'm here alive, tomorrow I don't know. Today you're listening to the report of heaven and hell, but there is an enemy who wants to deceive us. He doesn't want anyone to think that hell exists. He wants to make us forget the gravity of the reality of hell, and only think about our job, chasing our dreams and chase money. Money is a blessing. Dream is good, but God has to come first in our life. My house will stay, my car will stay here, even my money will stay behind if God will take me, and beyond the grave I will have to give an account before God. What will follow me is my conscience, my good works and my service to God. Brethren, don't go to that terrible place. Receive Jesus today because he wants to write your name in the book of life. There is a battle and war going on because of our souls. We don't know the devil, but people will see him after they die without salvation, but then it will be too late. On earth he wants to deceive us and make us enjoy the world. He does not want our attention to go to Jesus. For many people to be in the church seems like torture. It's difficult to obey God's word and sound doctrine, but I tell you it's worth losing this world and gaining your salvation. I was there in that terrible place of torment where people scream terrifying screams, and suddenly a bright lightning exploded and I heard a voice that called me in the light, Varma, and then he took me out of there, and when we left the world of torment, I screamed because I was in pain and I was all burned, and he refreshed me. He spoke so calmly that I believed it was the man himself, Jesus Christ. He told me, "Don't cry, I'm the Lord." Relieved, and he said, "Let's go to earth, I will show you my way." He took me and we were like flying, brothers. He told me, "Look, here is my path, brothers." The path of the Lord was about 1 meter wide. It was narrower like a corridor and straight. There was mud on the right side of the trail and on the left side, but the path was straight. We had landed there and he said, "This is my path, whoever goes all the way to the end will have life." Then I saw a brother coming with the Bible on his hand and he passed us. I saw that he was in anguish, but he kept walking quickly with that Bible, and the Lord said to me, "You see my son, he's going through great struggles and great test, but he is determined to go to the end. You can have struggle, you can have even disappointments, but don't give up on Jesus. I believe you will go to the end." I saw a sister with a little baby in her arms and a little boy. She was crying. I believe she is one of these sisters who carry the cross alone. She goes to church with her children. I saw that the sister also passed and was crying the same way like the previous brother. The Lord said, "My daughter is going through great distress, but she will see it through to the end." She didn't see us, but we saw her, and there came 2 young people. One was speaking badly of the way of Jesus. He said, "That's illusion, I don't want to stay here anymore. We are missing out and not enjoying life." His companion said, "I'm not going to stay here anymore," and he decided to get out of that path. Then he began to behave like an epileptic and he fell on the mud. When he fell, he slept there on the mud. Jesus said, "Look, these are the people who got out of my way." I noticed that there were a sea of people lying in that mud. Many were sleeping there. I saw a pastor with a big Bible lying on his back on the mud. He was sleeping. He said, "Look at this, here is a shepherd Jesus." I said, "He is sleeping here in the mud." Jesus spoke angrily about him. "This one, he's nothing more than a sin. His conscience has cauterized him. He's leading mine followers here in the mud sleeping. Without holiness no one will see him." Many pastors who open the doors of church are preaching that nothing is a sin, everything is acceptable. Church, beware of these liberal preacher. There was a couple ahead in the path of the Lord. I can tell you, brother, there are parts that are heavy. The lady wore indecent clothes like evening dress. It was scandalous. We were 2 meters away from them. I was ashamed of what they were doing. The lady was doing oral sex and said, "I can't live without you, I love you," and she won his guy who was reluctant. Jesus said, "This one is not his wife, this man is in adultery." Finally the Lord placed me back on his path and strengthened my feet to walk on his narrow path, and if I'm standing and walking, it is the hand of God that has held me.